Okay, it's another episode of Rise Up with Marc Mixon. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Mark.
It's this is our second post-election episode, but the first time we're going to have just sort of a sit down. You and I have chatted very briefly as we started up this call, and very briefly we talked about this a bit with Jason, but I wanted to sit down and do some election analysis. It was an election.
Yeah. I wonder to the Republicans' surprise, since they're all rigged and the Democrats were going to cheat, and I haven't heard anything about that since Trump won.
Right. Well, the Democrats obviously demonstrated they do not have the capability to rig an election. Otherwise, there's not a chance that Trump would have been in office. What I what I have found interesting is how, in theory, Trump was this existential threat and everything was going to be terrible if he got in office. And let me be clear for any listeners who don't know me. I think things will be terrible with Trump in office.
Yeah, they're going to be bad.
I think that it's likely going to be worse than Democrats actually think it's going to be. Because what's been interesting is watching how they're all real. The Democratic establishment has sort of moved on from this whole it's an existential threat thing, and the Biden administration has been taking no steps to try to mitigate any damage that they think Trump will do. Democrats writ large have just sort of moved on from this whole idea that it's an existential threat, and everyone is very chummy again these days.
Yeah, I think that ultimately all they really had, the only thing they could really do was to try to get through to the American people how dangerous this man is and what his ultimate goals are. And once he won the election, the Democrats don't have any means to stop him from becoming the president. They've got nothing they can do other than to overthrow the democratic process the way that they say the Republicans want to do, or have shown that they tried to do the last time around.
Whoa.
Hey,
I've got an echo happening here.
There's my voice.
Yeah, crazy. Hold on.
Well, I shouldn't be coming through your speakers. That's probably the issue.
That is exactly what's happening. I thought I had those speakers turned off.
No worries.
I think
like all of a sudden
now.
they were there. But yeah, that they can't. Now it's over. The people have spoken, and the Democrats have to eat their humble pie and go home. And they're not going. What they should do is continue to treat Trump with the disrespect that he deserves, and not have him over and being all chummy with him and shaking his hand. Just, you can still have a transition of power without acting like he deserves it.
Right. No, they could absolutely still. So there's two discussions to be had. One, if you truly believe someone or something is an existential threat to the country and to democracy, how do you address that? How do you behave towards that? That's question one. And question two is whether or not, what to do about Trump per se, I guess. Because I think you're right. They could for sure give a peaceful transfer of power and not want to destroy democratic norms, and still be talking about him like he's an existential threat, still be calling him out, still be, I don't want them fear mongering necessarily, but you don't hear the Democratic Party out there telling people to fight back. You don't hear them out there telling people to organize and to start, like there's some minor videos I think maybe I saw, and maybe I'm wrong. I think I saw a blurb of AOC saying, well, here's what we have to do moving forward. I don't listen to the Democrats a whole lot because I think they're liars sort of writ large, and there's not a point to listen to them. But my take is that they don't want to, like, there was something I saw, like they could enact, fucking, I don't know what it is. I shouldn't talk about it, but But there were things that the Biden administration could. Yeah, there were appointments they could make. That's what it was. They could make these appointments, but they didn't want to. They were afraid that if they did, that was going to cause Trump to fire a bunch of people. And like Democrats' primary concern is always and has been for at least this century just maintaining access to money and power. And what they're afraid of is like, well, if we play nice enough with Trump, then we can still be in positions of power. And so let's not do anything that's going to piss him off too much because we want to maintain our positions of power. They don't give a shit about representing people. They want to maintain power.
And I think the first time he ran on defeating Hillary Clinton. This second time that he ran on defeating the Democrats. So he is already pissed off. He already wants to upend everything. He already wants to take the power that the Democrats have and obliterate it and try to make sure that it can't come back. And he's made all kinds of comments during the election about this would be the last election, and if he got in, and all these things. And actually, just the other day, I wanted to read this to our audience here. During a meeting with House Republicans on Wednesday, made an apparent joke in which he remarked that the GOP might want to do something that would somehow allow him to serve a third term in 2028. He said, "I suspect I won't be running again unless you do something. Unless you say, he's so good, we have to just figure it out." So the man hasn't even become president yet. And he's already floating this concept of, I don't need to go anywhere. I can stay. And even during the election, he said, his biggest regret was that he did leave.
Well, that'd be a big something to do. Not that it's impossible. I mean, there is movements both on the right and the left side of the aisle to have a Article 5 convention and amend the Constitution. And the effort on the right side of the aisle is far more advanced than the one on the left side of the aisle.
And for those of us, or for those people in our audience that don't know, the 22nd Amendment is pretty clear about this. It says no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of the president more than once. But this article shall not apply to any person holding the office of president when this article was proposed by the Congress. So obviously that doesn't apply. And shall not prevent any person who may be holding the office of president or acting as president during the term within which this article becomes operative from holding the office of president or acting as president during the remainder of such term. So basically, you're the last guy and the door closes behind you. And that happened a while back. Now, I have heard that there's a little bit of ambiguity about whether or not he could be vice president or Speaker of the House or something like that. I hold out hope that the man will continue to deteriorate into his 80s and will not be able to continue on. But it's all of the sycophantic, narcissistic psychopaths that he's putting in power around him that worry me actually more than Trump at this point. The guardrails are just as crazy as him now. So I don't know what's going to happen.
Right. I mean, there aren't guardrails really. This is going to be a worse administration than the first one was, for sure. This first time was, and I think I said it back when he lost, like an awful lot of his presidency was a proof of concept. An awful lot of what was happening was pushing the bounds, seeing how far he could push things, how far people would let him go, who was going to stand with him.
He also had people around him, though, that it came out a couple of years later that he would order them to do something and they just wouldn't listen to the order. Generals, chief of staff, people like that, they did the opposite of what he requested. And this time around, he puts people in that will say yes to him no matter what he says. We'll find out how much further he can strain our democracy and our republic.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, I think that the concern that there won't be another election is not meritless, but unlikely. Um, how how free and fair that will be, yeah, no, it's going to be interesting. We certainly do live in interesting times.
Yeah. Yeah. Trying to be optimistic about it, but I think it was, in hindsight, it was actually easier to be optimistic the first time around. So it's kind of amazing that we're here again. And when
Yeah,
he
I mean,
gets out of office, he'll be the oldest president to have ever served. So
I was in an interesting place because I full on wanted Harris to lose. I did not think, and I think I said last week with Jason, like was disingenuous when I was saying, at least a little bit disingenuous when I was saying that Democrats should lose until they change, only because I don't believe they will change. I believe they would rather have a Trump presidency than appeal to a progressive populist base. I believe that they would rather maintain access to the power and the money that has been granted them by the wealthy corporations and the military industrial complex, and that those people are in charge, and they work for them, the Democrats, both parties, but the Democrats work for the wealthy and the warmongers, the war profiteers, and that's who they want to represent. And if they're given the choice, like, well, you can lose and we can have a fascist, or you can win and you have to turn your back on dark money and the war machine, well, then they'd just rather lose and have fascism. They're not interested in representing everyday people. And I think that's really what this election was about. I think I'd like to, if we can find some websites, we should have done some prep, but if we can find some websites that talk about
that's what I'm here
the
for.
numbers, right? Like that,
Oh, I
what,
got that up. I
who,
got that.
because Trump very clearly grew his voting base. He won with more people. This is the most people who have voted for Trump. And he grew his vote share with men across the board, but he grew his vote share with I think, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think with black men, with Latinos.
Yes, I can read you the numbers if you'd like.
Yeah, great.
So, all right, by age 18 to 29, 17% voted for Kamala Harris and 15% voted for Trump. 30 to 44, 26% voted for Kamala Harris and 23% voted for Trump. 45 to 64, Kamala Harris got 31% and Donald Trump got 34%. So actually the Gen Xers came out for him. And the boomer generation, 65 plus, Kamala Harris got 27% and Donald Trump got 28%. So he really won full out with 45 and up. And then as far as race and ethnicity, white people, 66%. Well, that doesn't make a total. Hold on one second. Oh, race or ethnicity, other race. 1 second. Let me see if I can find. I know there was another website that I was looking at that it was a little more clear. Here we go. Here we go. So males, 42% to 55% in favor of Trump. Females, 53% to 45% in favor of Kamala Harris. As far as race, 41% of white people voted for Kamala and 57% voted for Trump. And I'm not sure if this will get into it here. I've seen a couple of other websites that show that he actually went down in his percentage, both for white men and women voting for him this time around. But he picked up more Latino and African American people. Here it says black people, 85% for Kamala, 13% for Trump. Hispanic Latino, 52% for Harris, 46% for Trump. Asian, 54% for Harris, 39% for Trump, and other, which I believe was Muslim, Native American, that 42% for Harris and 54% for Trump. And let me see here. this website actually shows that 45 to 64 years old was 44% Kamala, 54% Donald Trump. And it was almost a split for 49% both ways, 65 plus for both of them. College graduate, 55% for Kamala, 42% for Trump, and no college degree, 42% for Kamala and 56% for Trump. So that's kind of where we fell here.
And we're still somewhat, preliminary. A lot of the states, a lot of blue states, a lot of Western states are very slow in counting all the votes. So, we got a lot of mail-ins out here out west. Got an awful lot of. So I feel like the last website I looked at, and there's like 97+% of the vote counted at this point. But California is a huge fucking state, and it's probably not finished its count. I don't think Washington has quite finished its count. Don't know about Oregon, but it wouldn't surprise me if both Oregon and Colorado have not quite finished their counts yet.
Yeah, it looks like 97% reporting in for Washington State, 96% for Oregon, 93% for California. So yeah, pretty much everywhere that I look here, it's not 100%, but most places are 99%. And then there's a few out west, like Colorado, that's at 97, Utah at 96.
So yeah, it's preliminary, but that just means we don't have the absolute final numbers and the final breakdown. Really, I mean, it's
right. And he won Wisconsin by looks like 30,000 votes, 1.697 to 1.667. Michigan, he won by about 80,000 votes. Pennsylvania, he won by 123,000 votes, just about 122,000. And so, yeah, the red wall, or it's a red wall now, the blue wall completely fell. Minnesota, Kamala did finally take that state by about 144,000 votes or so. But it was another very close election. It doesn't seem that way when you look at the Electoral College numbers, because he got 312 to her 226. But it's not like everybody's saying it's a mandate for him to get anything he wants done. But I think we still live in a pretty divided country where half of us are going to be upset and the other half are going to be elated for the next 4 years.
I don't think it's a mandate even a little bit, but that's what I was saying this entire time. And like anytime people make the argument, well, we need to vote against Trump, I have been saying, like, no politician ever got elected and came out and said, well, I sure am glad everyone voted against the other guy.
Yeah.
They believe that you are voting for them and for the policies that they are for. So if you were voting for Harris, and Harris has gone out and said that she wants to continue Joe Biden's policies and she wants to continue supporting Israel and she wants to continue, like, that's what you're voting for. It's not, Harris would not have won and said, see, they all voted against Trump. Even though the Democratic Party, that's their whole strategy for 3 election cycles now is, hey, vote against Trump.
Yeah.
That's not how politicians think. And Trump absolutely is going to regard this as a mandate. And 76 million people is the count now who voted for Trump.
Yeah, I can look at that too. I mean, and ultimately, yeah, 76.4. So 76 million, almost 76.5, and then 73 million, almost 74 million for Harris. So you're looking at about 2.5 million votes more for Trump. The fact that he actually won the popular vote, which is the first time I think a Republican has won the popular vote in quite some time. And the fact that he took the House and the Senate as well.
Yeah, no, it's going to be rough. We are going to have a Congress that for the next 2 years anyway is going to be as permissive for Trump as the current Supreme Court is, right? The Supreme Court has ruled that presidents are essentially immune to do whatever they want, which I don't want to expressly call for violence. I don't think this is the right thing to do because I'm not going to like it when Republicans do it.
Yeah.
But had Joe Biden really and truly felt, now let's go back to how do you deal with something that is legitimately an existential threat to the country, an existential threat to the republic, an existential threat to democracy. How do you treat that? What is your response to it? I'm trying to think of an example of when they've claimed that X, Y, or Z is an existential threat. Let's use communism. Communism was something that they thought was an existential threat to the country.
It certainly was to capitalists.
They turned all the levers of the machine against communism. They, abridged people's rights. They murdered people. They executed people. They ruined people's livelihoods and careers, reputations, jobs. People were fired. People were imprisoned. They had Senate hearings about, if you've ever been associated with the Communist Party. Certainly haven't seen the Biden administration behave that way toward Trump. Like you did not see when they had, because what was the Congress the first 2 years of Biden's presidency? He probably never had all three, but he had.
No, he never did.
He had the House, if not the Senate, right?
Yeah. Well, the Senate Majority Leader, I know in these last 2 years was Chuck Schumer.
Okay, so they've got the Senate now.
But yeah, but I'm not sure, honestly. Biden first 2 years.
Was Nancy Pelosi still the Speaker of the House when Biden was elected?
Honestly, God, isn't it amazing how you can just put this stuff out of your mind? Maybe move on to another point. I'll continue to.
Yeah, I'm fascinated because I think maybe they did have, or maybe they won the Senate in 2022 and they didn't have it in 2020. I know that Harris broke more Senate ties than, like she was legitimately one of the most active vice presidents we've had, because one of the only duties of the vice president is to be the president of the Senate.
So in 2020, the Democrats had the majority in the House, 222 to 213. And let me see about Senate.
Because 2022 is when they lost the Senate.
It was split 50-50 in the Senate.
Split 50-50.
But of course, the vice president gets the deciding vote there. And so that would have been Harris. So they had one person advantage in the Senate. So yeah, for the first 2 years they had power enough.
Yeah, they had power enough. They absolutely could have created hearings. They could have been attacking the Trump regime.
Well, and they kind of did. I mean, they did have the hearing on January 6th, but I don't know if it just wasn't advertised right, marketed correctly to the country, because I don't think a lot of people paid attention and didn't really care about the results.
Well, and they were my sense is they were slow to have it, and they didn't really deal with the actual conspiracy to overturn an election, right? They focused on the violent riot that took place at the Capitol.
Right. And Trump's culpability, but not really much else.
They didn't bother talking about all the Congress people, senators, state house people who were actually part of a legitimate attempt to overturn an election. Because that's attacking their own, and they didn't want to, again, right? They did not behave as if elected officials were an existential threat. They did not behave as if the Republicans who are now in office and who were in office then could be an existential threat. They wanted to demonize Trump, and they certainly prosecuted an awful lot of everyday people. They
Right.
certainly imprisoned a lot of people who would protest. They certainly used it as an excuse to beef up protesters as domestic terrorists, to expand the police state, to pass laws criminalizing the people's right to assemble and redress, petition the government for a redress of grievances. But they did not, in fact, really have a full-on assault against the people who were responsible for a faulty attempt to overturn an election.
Right. And Merrick Garland kind of slow rolled, how the Justice Department kind of dealt with these things as well. Not that I know that much about the process and what he could and could not do, but I think that was something that I heard a lot of Trump supporters talk about during the election. They went after him to put him in jail and bankrupt him through the courts, and it's like, well, actually, a lot of that was states doing that, especially New York State, and of course the failed one in Georgia where they tried to. That was probably the most damning one, where he called up an elected official and tried to get extra votes during the election. But still, even the things that he was found guilty for in New York State, the Republicans like to talk a lot about states' rights, but the states did go after him, and somehow that was the overall deep state going after him, which I think is kind of ridiculous. And I don't know. I mean, I've heard people make arguments that the Stormy Daniels thing was not something that he should have had to be penalized for, but I mean, his lawyer went to jail for it. He gave the word, the official word to do the bribe. He also paid off the National Enquirer to keep those things hidden. Just feels like, for anybody else, they usually get caught up in the wrongdoing that they do, and Donald Trump just always somehow gets a slap on the wrist or is allowed free of it. And he is a convicted sex offender, and so I think it's interesting that people are up in arms about his pick for Attorney General, Matt Gaetz, being one as well. He's not a convicted one, but he's rumored to be. Who do we think he's going to be putting around him? And they're going to be the same kind of scumbag that he is. That's just the way it goes. So, but the American people didn't seem to care, or they didn't know. And we can get into that a little bit too today, about how on election day there were some pretty interesting Google search attempts that people made that were, it seems, most people didn't even really know what was going on until the day of. And there was even, I'm just gonna bury the lead here, or not. I'm not going to bury the lead. In an election result or a search result during the election that I find fascinating is people were saying, we're searching for, can I change my vote? And then there was even one, I think, of, am I stupid?
Answers no and yes, but
you might be ignorant, and ignorance, especially willful ignorance, is a form of stupidity, but it doesn't mean that you're an idiot, but that you are being stupid about this topic. Yeah.
So, Sotomayor's dissent with that Supreme Court ruling was stark, right?
About the ruling that the president, the Supreme Court ruling that the president basically has immunity from anything, from prosecution or anything like that, due to presidential acts.
Yep. And in her dissent, she said, imagine a president states in an official speech that he intends to stop a political rival from passing legislation that he opposes, no matter what it takes to do so. That would be an official act. He then hires a private hitman to murder that political rival. Under the majority's rule, the murder indictment could include no allegation of the president's public admission of premeditated intent.
Yeah. And I believe the Republicans' response, or at least the justices' responses, the conservatives, said that, well, it doesn't stop any legality falling upon the people who did the act. So the hitman could be prosecuted, and
Sure.
that would stop the hitman from doing it.
Yeah, because The idea that a hitman could be prosecuted has stopped them. There is no murder, in point of fact, right? Prosecution stops all murder. There is no violence in this country because it's against the law, and people can be prosecuted for it.
Right. Yeah. I know I'm going to get in trouble, so I just don't do it. Right. Well,
Right.
that and the fact that, we're not talking even about this isn't the mob, even though, and well, I guess I could make an argument that the mob is folded into our government, but the ultimately, he'd send SEAL Team 6 or, something like that. There would be professional service members that would be the ones enacting the murder and or carrying it out. And
Commanding the military is one of the core functions of the presidency, commander in chief
yeah,
of the military. And if the president were to, yep, and that Sotomayor used that, uses SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival, immune. Expressly immune, right? Like,
yeah,
and we, the people who are carrying those out, even if it's not SEAL Team 6, like the military now drones people, they might not even know who they're droning, right? Like
right.
he can get information from one thing, give coordinates, and then some kid in a trailer drops bombs. And so,
Well, let's be honest. There's also other means to destroy someone without killing them. There are already these guys called jackals that go into other parts of the world where a country, let's say in Africa, has a certain mineral deposit that corporations need and want. And so they first start by going through the politics there to get what they want. And then if they can't get it that way, then they bring in these guys that start with blackmail and character assassinations and things like that, trying to just discredit anyone that would be in their way. And murder is the last thing that they do. So, there's lots of means on the way to killing you that they could start with first.
I think that the Supreme Court ruling was terrible. I think that is an existential threat to democracy and to our republic,
Yes.
making our president a king. And if Joe Biden and the Democrats truly believed that Trump and the Republican Party and the Supreme Court as it is now were an existential threat, they could have droned them all. They could have dropped drone bombs. They could have treated the Republican Congress people as if they are Palestinian civilians and just gone ahead and murdered Trump and the worst 20, 30 of our GOP Congress people. They could have made sure that they bombed out of existence the conservative majority in the Supreme Court and then done a recess appointment and appointed a whole new slew. And then I guarantee that suddenly the Republicans, watching a president be the sort of dictator that they wanted on their side, would have thought, well, this is a bad fucking idea. Maybe we shouldn't have done this. And,
Yeah, maybe. But in my experience of being on this earth for 41 years, it seems like once a party does something, it gives the other party right to follow their lead. And
well,
so
but
I think Democrats, they've already fallen down the same corporate pro-war hole that the Republicans have fallen down. But there's still some norms and some things within democracy that they don't want to give up. But the Republicans, I think, have shown a long time
man,
ago that they're more about keeping their power no matter what it takes.
I disagree. I don't think their Democrats have any fucking. There's not a thing about democracy they care about. They just are playing good cop, bad cop, and they know that their billionaire dark money donors will keep them in power as long as they play the role of normalizing the terrible things the Republicans do.
Yeah, that might be true. I think to
And
the
if they have,
individual,
because what you
yeah,
said that it seems as if once one party does something that allows the other party. Well, that's just what I'm saying. The Republican Party has done things and tried to establish norms, and the Democrats don't, in fact, do it not because they are afraid that if they keep ratcheting down, the people won't take it. Like, it's not that they love democracy. It's that they love power. If the Republicans said, okay, now presidents can do this, and so Democrats did that, like the country would fall apart very quickly. The way that they maintain power is Republicans do a bad thing and Democrats just sort of say, okay, well, let's normalize this stuff. Let's make sure that it's, well, we'll say bad things about it, but we're not going to escalate. Like the escalation is the job of the Republican Party. And the Democrats' job is to normalize and to continue to extract because they don't want to turn the heat up too fast. We're the frogs in the pot. And
Yeah.
if the Democrats accelerate, shit will boil over, right? And people will know. So,
yeah, that
I
might
think
be
it's about
true.
democracy, even a little bit.
I think in some ways, you can certainly say that about the party. I think to the individual, there are still individuals within the Democratic Party that look in the mirror and believe they're still the good guy, and have not searched deeply enough into their own party's situation to realize that they're a part of the problem.
I think 95% on both sides look in the mirror and think they're the good guys.
Yeah, that might be true, but again, it's just my personal opinion. I've watched the conservatives go far, far afield of what they used to say was acceptable, and Democrats, I think, probably started that even when I was a little child, and I didn't really notice because I was a kid. And I was just listening to the rise of a video about the rise of neoliberalism and kind of how they pulled us away from like a Keynesian mentality of building a middle class, having strong unions, worker representation, and all of that, and pulled us into this Margaret Thatcher, Reagan kind of mentality of we all are mini capitalists, and we have to defeat each other to survive. And I think Democrats lost their way a long time ago for sure, but I think they still believe in what they call the American democracy. And I think that there's a lot of Republicans that don't care about democracy. They just believe in the republic. But I mean, I think it's in the name as well. Republicans are about the republic. Democrats are about democracy. But ultimately, if anybody has paid attention to this show on the way here, we both feel that the parties have lost their way significantly. So,
and let me, I guess, be clear. Mitigate damage? I don't fucking know. Like it's this episode will never be monetized, but
no, at least not on YouTube. No, we do make pennies on Rumble, but
I'm not calling for the Democrats to have done that or to do it now.
right.
I think that would be bad. I just think that like they were given the power, and it demonstrates that they are not interested in addressing what they claim is an existential threat to the republic.
And also how they've eroded the ability for the people to have any power in this country has kind of contributed to this outcome. So now there are no mechanisms to fight. Peaceful protesting will put you in jail. And there's no unions to organize and fight back through that. That's just, we're here because of the horrible policy decisions that they've made every step of the way for the last 40, 50 years. Undoing the New Deal and making it about big corporations' interests and not the people.
Yeah, let's turn for a minute and let's talk about the third party aspects of this, because third parties did terribly. On the plus side, Democrats couldn't even a little bit claim. There's like no fucking district where the Democrats can claim, oh, Jill Stein or Cornel West or whoever else they might want to, Claudia de la Cruz. Those would be the only three, but only Jill Stein made a dent at all. But even there was not a single state in the nation where she made enough of a dent, where she pulled enough votes to have swung the election. Like Democrats lost by a larger margin than anyone.
Oh, yeah.
In fact, I think Democrats lost by a larger margin than if you took all the third parties and put them together. They still lost greater than that. Like
at least, yes, at least by the Electoral College numbers.
Right.
Because it looks like it's about 2 million votes went to other. 2.3 if you count other candidates, but just the top three. Jill Stein got 763,000 votes. Robert Kennedy Jr. got 739,000 votes, and he wasn't even in it anymore. And Chase Oliver got 635,000.
Well, and Kennedy was the most fascinating. Like, dude, I'm now sold. Dude was an op from the beginning. Like, he is compromised. His father and uncle would be ashamed that he bears their name. And
supposedly, he did offer Kamala Harris first to join her party, but of course, they didn't want anything to do with him.
Right. And did he really? Like, he dude is a spite-based douchebag who, like, he withdrew and continued to fight in court to keep his name on the ballot in states that were leaning Democrat. Any place he thought he would draw votes from Democrats, he fought to have his name on the ballot. And in any state where he was afraid he'd be a spoiler to Trump, he fought to have his name removed from the ballot. Like, he was an op to hurt the Democrats, in my opinion, from the beginning. And, you know, in my opinion, the libertarians, who in 2016, libertarians got like a 4.5 million fucking votes. They by themselves, they were the largest independent third party in the country. They had the most voter access. They I'm blanking on who that was now, and I used to use that all the time, because, like, where they claimed that Stein had enough votes to swing the vote away from Hillary, they would ignore that whoever it was. Why am I not remembering who ran in
Here, I'll look it up.
2016?
I'll have it in 2 seconds.
Johnson, right? It was Johnson.
I think it was Johnson, yeah.
Johnson got 3 times the votes that Stein got in all 3 of those states where they claimed that Stein swung it. So, yeah, I think Johnson got like 4.5 million, and then in 2020,
yeah, it was Gary Johnson. You're right.
Yeah. In 2020, libertarians lost their vote share. Joe Jorgensen, I think, and I think Jorgensen got like 1.5 million votes in 2020, and this time they got like 600,000, 650,000. I don't know what they got this time around. I liked Chase Oliver, frankly. I thought he was for a libertarian. I thought Chase Oliver had it going on. But the Mises Caucus that took over the Libertarian Party, and I don't remember when the Mises Caucus revolution in the Libertarian Party was. It was right around 2020, 2021, maybe.
Jorgensen got 1.8 million votes. 1.2% of the national vote. Let me see what Johnson got. That's the primaries. It's still Jorgensen. It's the primaries.
So yeah, the Mises Caucus took over the Libertarian Party at the mid 2022.
And yes, the Johnson Weld ticket did receive 4.4 million votes, almost 4.5, or 3.28% of the popular vote in 16.
So yeah, so libertarians did great this time. So the Mises Caucus, for people who aren't a nerd about independent party politics like I am, is what I call the wingnut caucus of the Libertarian Party. I mean, they claim to be the Austrian Economic Party, but truthfully, they put together a coalition of all the extremists of any particular bent, and they took over the Libertarian Party. And they started doing a lot of racist dog whistling on their social medias, and I'm having a hard time with names today. The new president, she's become a bestie of Nick Brana. They together formed the Rage Against the War Machine thing. I can.
The Mises Caucus president?
Yeah, or chairman of the party, the chair of the party, libertarian chair. What's her name?
Looking it up.
McCardle, Angela McCardle.
McCardle. Okay.
Yeah, and so McCardle this time around was expressly like they created a new PAC for Kennedy in theory, right? They announced like the Libertarian Party was campaigning and fundraising for Kennedy, and McCardle was saying expressly that this will help Trump. It's like the Libertarian Party fucking imploded once McCardle and the Mises Caucus took over. They had states disaffiliate with them. I know that the local Libertarian Party is crumbled and in disarray. They are all wingnut extremists now, and they were expressly, like in theory, had this joint fundraising PAC with Kennedy, but we're doing it like the Libertarians were getting none of the money. All the money they were raising was going expressly to Kennedy, and the Libertarian Party chair was expressly saying this will help us get Trump elected. And then Kennedy, so Kennedy. So what was fascinating, even though Green Party, I think in 2020 maybe got over 1 million votes. No, that's probably not true. Actually, in 2020, let me see. Look my numbers up here because
Sure.
I know I'm sure I'm wrong. Actually, I bet the Green Party got like 400,000 votes in 2020, but over 1 million in 2016.
Looking it up now. Official Green Party election results. Let me see. Well, no, that's going to break it down in the weeds too much.
Because Howie Hawkins was, Howie, you and I have chatted once or twice. Great guy, but not an inspiring speaker.
Right.
I feel 2020, I voted for Howie in theory, but I forgot to sign my ballot. And when the Secretary of State contacted me to cure it, I never did, because by then the election was over and what's it matter?
Right. Still looking, 1 second.
But I bet Stein got like 1 million, 1.1 million in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
But this year, with only 700 and what'd you say, 736, something like that?
Hold on.
Or 736,000. I know. I'm asking for a thing.
So you're good. 763,027. Yeah.
Okay, 763 this year, which greatly overperformed 2020, which was some 400,000 that Howie got, but underperformed 2016 is my belief. But the Green Party was the third place presidential candidate this time. Like Kennedy drew enough people from all walks. I believe Kennedy got some Democratic votes. I believe Kennedy got some Republican votes. I believe Kennedy got an awful lot of Libertarian votes, because the Libertarian Party fucking cratered. I'm not gonna ask you because you're still looking up other things I've asked.
Looks like Howie Hawkins got 407,000 votes.
Okay, 400. That was about what I said. Yeah, 400,000. If you were to add the Kennedy and Chase Oliver votes together, they might be close to the 1.5 million that I bet they got in 2020. But I don't think, I think, it is fascinating how the third party movement overall has crumbled. And I don't know what that means, right? That's a thing that I am really looking at, because I believe this election was more a repudiation of Democrats than it was vindication of Republicans. I do not believe that the American people gave Republicans a mandate. 76 million probably did.
Yeah.
Let's say 70
I haven't seen how close the House and Senate races were, but I imagine they were close because so was the the overall. But I've said for a while now that probably the best hope that any independent or third party has had is a name like Bernie Sanders saying, you know what, I'm going to run under this. If Bernie had decided to go green in 16 or 2020, I think we could have seen the most numbers ever given to a third party. But I think that he's lost a lot of goodwill though since then because of how much he's just decided to fall back in line with the Democrats. So yeah, I think that third parties they don't get enough press coverage. They don't get enough airtime in this country. The major markets basically only give that time to the Republicans or the Democrats, and that hurts them greatly. But then on top of that, no offense to Jill Stein, there's not enough name recognition in the people that they put up.
Well, and that's an interesting point. And I don't disagree. I don't know what other name they could have put up, frankly. Like that, and I'll be honest, that's why I was excited when Cornel West was seeking the Green Party nomination, because he was a name that had, I think, far broader recognition. I don't like our culture of celebrity that requires you have a name. Jason, when I was making jokes back during our campaign, I was joking with Jason about, hey, you could maybe put so-and-so up for vice president. And it was not a serious thing. We were talking about some, insider machinations, and someone who was challenging his seat and said, like, well, maybe we could offer him the vice presidency or vice presidential slot for Stein if he withdraws from this congressional race. And, Jason is a very serious individual. And he took it as sort of a semi-serious proposition, I guess. But his response was, well, he's a nobody. He doesn't have any national recognition.
Right.
And I sort of feel like, and I know it is important. We are in a culture of celebrity, and if you're not a name, how do you excite people? Jill Stein had more name recognition because this is her third run for president than essentially anyone else on the third party ticket, except Cornel West, who I don't think really significantly tried to be on ballots. I know that volunteers in his campaign worked very, very hard, but I don't believe the campaign staff was doing what needed to be done. I don't believe they were spending their money in such a way to get themselves on tickets. And I think some of that is evidenced by the fact that West and Stein raised about the same amount of money. And you can look at how many ballots Stein got on that her campaign had to get on that didn't already have Green Party access. And then look at, because it was like 1920 that Stein got on, that the Green Party as a party maybe had ballot access for like 19 states.
Right.
I don't have these numbers for sure,
and in the case of Ohio, where I live, she was on the ballot, but unfortunately there was an issue. Maybe you can speak more clearly to that, of how something happened with her vice president candidate. So then she was no longer able to be counted if you voted for her here.
Oh, really? Interesting.
Yep. And it even said it right on the ballot that, she cannot be elected. These votes don't count if you select her.
Fascinating. Well, so, I mean, I do know to a degree what happened. They had a hard time. I think Butch Ware was a great vice presidential candidate, but he came on the ticket very at the end. Like, they had been talking with other people, and those people backed out. There were people who had ties. They were part of the Palestinian Muslim community, and once Biden dropped out, they had someone on the hook who was going to potentially be the vice president. And when Biden dropped out and Harris came on and nominated Tim Walz, They were maybe they were from Minnesota. I'd have to look up and see where it was, but they were associated enough with the Democratic Party that once Biden dropped out, it's like, well, now it wouldn't really be prudent for me to step up and do this thing. And just writ large, I think the Stein campaign took a long time to find a vice presidential candidate. And so what was happening is that they were putting a name on the ballot, because when you seek your ballot access, you have to have a president and a vice presidential name. And they were using like the name of the campaign's head of marketing or something like that. They're using a name. And in most states, what you can do is you can have a fill-in name, and then that person can withdraw from the race and you can put someone else in. And maybe what I would suspect happened, I'm sure it happened in several states, is that there's a deadline for when that withdrawal can happen.
Yeah, I can actually read it out now. I got an article here. It says Secretary of State Frank LaRose has been notifying voters that even though Stein's name is on the ballot, her candidacy is not legitimate in Ohio. LaRose's office said it received a letter from Anita Rios, a longtime Green Party candidate in Ohio, saying she had withdrawn as Jill Stein's running mate. The office said the withdrawal came after the deadline to remove a candidate's name from the ballot. But Rios said that the withdrawal letter wasn't legitimate. That letter that he got was not from me and did not have my signature. I have subsequently sent him a notarized letter that stated that I did not authorize that letter and I didn't send it. LaRose's office says the initial letter requesting Rios' name be withdrawn was delivered by the Ohio Green Party chair. According to the office, any candidate may withdraw from the race at any point leading up to Election Day. Says Rios said her name was initially put on Stein's ticket in Ohio as the placeholder for Stein's eventual vice presidential candidate when petitions were circulated back in January. Stein chose Butch Ware to be her running mate in August. LaRose's office said that happened after the deadline to file a certification of a candidate to fill the vice presidential vacancy, which is 86 days prior to the election. LaRose's office explained local boards of elections must remove the name of any candidate who withdraws on or before the 70th day before an election, and that those boards will not remove the name of any candidate who withdraws after the 70th day before an election. The result is that Stein-Rios' ticket will appear on the ballot, but votes for them will not be invalidated. If those votes do not count, it says something really sad about our democracy here in Ohio, Rios said, but we are fighting to have those votes counted, and I would encourage all Jill Stein's voters to go ahead and vote for her. So yeah, I know for a fact that the ballot stated that they would not be counted if you voted for them.
Fascinating. Yeah. I mean, I think what's interesting is whatever happened where the person who was on the ballot said that they didn't in fact send a letter, that someone else sent a letter and they were not authorized, and that the letter like that is some internal machinations that. And if it was, in fact, the Ohio Green Party chair that sent the letter, like, I don't think there was any bad faith here. I bet the Ohio Green Party chair, once Butch Ware signed on, was probably desperately trying to follow the rules and like, okay, well, let's get our placeholder withdrawn so that Butch can be on the ticket. And so whoever the chair was sent a letter, and right. I
will try to do some legwork and see if I can get her or the Ohio chair on this podcast.
Too, yeah, because I would love to talk about it. Now, what's interesting is I don't think they had to, frankly. Like, there was some discussion in the Washington party because it was taking so long for the Stein campaign to find a vice presidential running mate, to find a running mate. There was some discussion about like, well, maybe what needs to happen. And I don't really remember if this idea was floated by the state party or by the campaign. I remember Margaret Elizabeth was not in favor of this. And Margaret Elizabeth was the chair of the state party, I believe, at the time. But there was some discussion about, well, why don't we have multiple running mates? Like, why don't we have people who are going to appeal to different demographics? So we can have a Black running mate in these states and a Muslim running mate in these states and a woman running mate in these states. And the Stein campaign could have multiple running mates, which freaked some people out. But I believe I wouldn't. It's not a hill I would die on. I wouldn't bet my life on it. But I believe that Ralph Nader had more than one running mate. I don't think there is anything, when I read through the laws, I don't see anything against that. Like, if by chance the Stein campaign won, or if when Nader had multiple running mates, if Nader had won, then like when a presidential ticket wins, what really wins is their slate of electors, right? And so
Right.
that slate of electors then has to choose a single person to vote for, right? So then it would be the Electoral College. So if the Green Party had by chance run 5 different tickets, Stein where in some states, Stein whatever in other states, Stein whatever else in other states, and by chance Stein won, then the Stein electors, when the Electoral College met, then they would have to determine who is the actual vice president that we're sending forward. Like, they would have to end up voting for a single president and vice president.
Right.
I think it would be interesting. I think it would be a fascinating, because it's not a thing that has really happened. I would love to talk with the Ohio Greens. Let's get them on. This doesn't all need to be Washington organizers and activists here.
We've talked about. I'll start trying to get a little more people from my end, and anywhere else, but
it hasn't been. We had that Green Party district attorney general candidate in Pennsylvania. We've obviously had Safe Section 9 activist from New York, Brian Winters with the American Union out of North Carolina. It's not been all Washington all the time here, but it has been very Washington heavy, because this is where I do my work. This is where I'm based, and this is the activists and organizers that I know. We had Keith Frank out of upstate New York, DJ Elf 7 out of New York City.
Yeah, that was, I think, our second or third ever show.
And
he will not be back.
Yeah, no, Ed and I have had a bit of a falling out. I just,
I think quite a few people have had a falling out with Ed. Yeah.
Well, yeah, he's yes. Ed is a very powerful organizer. He makes connections maybe faster than anyone I've met, but he burns through them almost as quickly.
Sad.
And I don't have any bad blood with Ed. I'm not mad. I just
sure.
He just couldn't pace himself and started making demands, and it started impacting my other work. Like, he's starting to there was I'm not going to get into it, but it started impacting my other work. It's like, Ed, I will try to put you in contact with people. I will try to help you develop these relationships, but I'm not going to destroy my relationships for you. So like, either slow your roll and let me help you develop some relationships of your own, or I just can't work with you anymore. That was the basic of it, right?
Yeah. People can be very intense when it comes to this topic, and sometimes you have to know when and where to pick your fights, especially if you're trying to challenge those that are supposed to be on your side.
It is rising up is a difficult, long fucking struggle. This is not going to be a short battle. This is not going to be an easy task. And we need to pace ourselves. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And we shouldn't be burning out each other and attacking each other. That's not how you build solidarity. So I have hopes that Ed and I can find our way to work together again someday. I just there's got to be some boundaries about what is acceptable and what is not acceptable as we're working toward mutual goals.
Yep. So Ed, if you're watching, we're not picking on you. We're just being honest.
Yeah, part of me would like to have Davi's campaign manager on.
Oh God. Well, maybe his campaign manager, sure.
Right. And, because again, Nissan is a guy that I've known for a lot of years. And, and I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated by Nissan's conversion to Daviism.
Yeah. Well, and it's, to those that are watching that don't know, one of our early episodes was also with the presidential candidate Davi. And interesting man. Um, Not really my cup of tea, but at the same time, it wasn't that he was off base with everything he felt should be the priority of this country. And I think that's kind of been the most fascinating part of what we've learned on this show, that when we get a chance to engage with people that maybe are a little more left or a little more right or a little more in the stratosphere with the way that they think about these things, it's always an interesting conversation, that's for sure. And you find out too that there's a lot of people that are trying to affect change, running for big tickets. They really don't have a wing or a prayer, but they're still trying. So
It is interesting. Yeah. Like, Davi tried running for mayor of New York and then jumped to the presidential ticket.
yeah,
I don't believe they got ballot access anywhere. Like, they're from early on, the strategy seemed to truly be either win the Green Party nomination or be a write-in campaign. And
right.
we talked with Emmanuel Pastreich.
Yeah, and I enjoyed
um,
his interview quite a
yeah,
bit.
really, it was a great conversation. I don't necessarily agree with all of his views. He was running for president, and we maybe had a deconstruction about what does that mean. Like, if you're not
Yeah,
on ballots, then in what way are you running for president?
right.
Emmanuel, like, I thought both he and Davi had a lot of very interesting thoughts, and they are not wrong on a lot of the challenges that we are facing. I was fascinated by Emmanuel saying, like, he's not going to recognize the validity of this election. He did not recognize the validity of the last election.
Mm.
I don't understand how some of those things work, but yeah, it's fascinating. People who are trying to make all this change, running at the highest levels before they make networks at the grassroots level. And I get
Right.
it. Like,
Yeah,
I do
running
get it.
before they can walk, maybe in some ways.
Well, I don't, yeah.
One day, if we ever have merch, we have to do a shirt that says "buffering," because that's what you normally say when you take these long pauses. Brain buffering. Yeah.
Buffering. Yeah. I was like watching the Tyson fight last night. Buffering. Was it last
Oh
night?
yeah,
2
you
nights
watched
ago?
that?
Oh, I did. I
Oh,
did. It was,
we should have led. Sometimes we have more lighthearted dialogue in the beginning of these shows. We should have led with that one.
I should have talked to, well, we still can. It's, we can
Yeah.
wrap with, we can, that was it was awful. It was,
Yeah. Turns out age is a factor
oh my
in
God. Yeah.
in fighting.
He looked like an old man in the ring, better than me. He looked better than I would
Sure,
if I
of
was in the
course.
ring. Absolutely. And I
Yeah.
think that the first time he hit Paul, like, Paul's like, whoa, that hurt. And was
Yeah.
not, was not willing to engage. But he was not Iron Mike anymore. Like, you watched fucking Tyson fights from the late 80s, early 90s.
Oh
Like,
God.
he'd hit people and they just wouldn't feel it for the rest of their lives.
Yeah. He was scary in all ways, in and out
Yeah,
of the ring.
he was not a right. Yeah, he was a monster. Youngest ever heavyweight champion, won multiple heavyweight championships in multiple leagues. I don't follow boxing a whole lot, so I don't really know. But dude was a monster. And now this Jake Paul kid is going to be insufferable because he beat Mike Tyson, but he really, yeah, it was rough. I think Tyson made a mistake getting in that ring. I hope he made a lot of money. apparently he did a press conference or something afterwards where he maybe broke down and said that he knew he couldn't do it, but he had to make some money for his family, sort of thing. I did not see that. I think Tyson made a mistake getting in the ring again, and once he did, I was sort of hoping he was going to hurt Jake Paul. I gotta say.
Yeah.
It was it was a sad moment. It was a sad moment. Well, okay, let's go back to politics. Sorry.
Yeah. We'll wrap up for today.
Yeah, let's wrap it up for today. I am going to be intrigued about what the way forward is. I think we need to have Brian Winters on the show sooner rather than later. He's got his American Union. I know that he's sort of retooling and trying to think, like, is there a way he can influence Trump? I know that I still don't think Democrats are reformable. And I think there needs to be a third party movement. I think progressive populism has not been given a chance. And I think trying to run progressive populism through the Democratic Party, because they are not interested in populism. I'm fascinated. I wish I could have someone on the show who inherently thinks populism is right wing, because I do not believe it is inherently right wing, but people talk about it these days because Trump has some populist sounds that it's in somehow inherently right wing.
Right.
So I'm not convinced you can market whatever you're going to do as progressive populism, because I think the Democrats have tried to demonize populism, and demagogues like Trump tap into populist anger and then use that to turn the electorate on themselves, right? And they only want policies for themselves. And I think progressive populism is, more universal policies. Like Obama at one point was running on a sort of a populist ticket, like before his 2008 thing. I mean, he
for
ran
sure
on progressive populism, hope and change, and
yeah, he just didn't do it. But
didn't do it. Yeah. So I'm not sure what the way forward is. I have questions. I'm a Green Party member.
I think Barack Obama was kind of it was an interesting moment where celebrity was built while he ran, because I don't think a lot of people knew who he was.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And so it just kind of shows that through the right kind of lensing, you can, in the 2 years or so that you have to run for president, you can build that celebrity over time. But I also think that it's probably, my brain goes back and forth to this concept of like, well, what kind of beloved public figure could run for the office and certainly not be worse than Trump. And I know people have always floated around the idea of like The Rock or stuff like that. I'm not saying that I think that's who I would want to vote for, but even if you just did one round of putting a person like that in the Green Party nomination, I think you'd get a lot more people to turn their attention towards the Green Party, and that might be enough to solidify a future ballot where people take them more seriously. Because I think right now there's just a lot of people who still just don't even know what that is, even though they've been around for decades now.
I think the issue with the Green Party, I think there's multiple issues with the Green Party, and I'm a Green Party member, and I, if they become the vehicle, I think that would be great. I don't think these issues are really Green Party specific. I think one of the issues, and I almost hate to say it, but I think the Green Party is very decentralized. It is very small d democratic. And on this podcast, I have been an advocate for small d democracy. But it doesn't create a party that has a real unified strategy, I would say. And things take an awful long time to happen. And I'm not advocating for less democracy necessarily. I'm not sure it's not not a circle I've been able to square, but I think that's one of the issues, one minor issue probably.
I've seen some of that just in the limited time I've worked with them on the live streaming that we do together. There's a lot of people that get to put their 2 cents in and be a part of a process that can very quickly get so muddied that you're like, what am I? What answers are right here? What information do I really go with? And that's just for trying to put a live stream together. So,
Right.
and I that's not to say that I didn't enjoy my time or that I didn't find value in the people that I worked with, but it did get very quickly confusing because of how many people would have a say or interject into the conversation.
And I likely will continue for at least a while to engage with the Green Party. I've not been very, this election cycle tired me out, and the work job tired me out.
Yeah, I get it.
Other issues with the Green Party that I think are not specific to the Green Party. And I would say that maybe this, like there is some of the socialist parties use what's called democratic centralism. And that is maybe we'll try to have an organizer from DSA or Socialist Alternative. I don't think DSA uses democratic centralism, but Socialist Alternative does, PSL does. But that is a small d democratic movement that once you make the decision, like then there are party leaders and they are in charge, and everyone in the party is supposed to fall in line behind it. And the Green Party doesn't have that sort of an ethos around them.
Right.
And I've not been historically a fan of democratic centralism, but watching some of the dysfunction within the Green Party makes me think, well, maybe those guys are onto a thing. But some of the other issues I think that every small party has is, and maybe I've talked about the issue that I have with party platforms on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I fully feel that all minor parties that deal with this large, expansive platform have less chance of drawing people in than they do of having people opt out. I think that large policy platforms are a trick that the major parties use to get people to self-select out, and that any minor party that is following that same mold that the Democrats and Republicans use are going to get the same result. They're going to have this big expansive platform on a whole lot of issues. And rather than attracting a lot of people to their platform, what it's going to do is it's going to cause people to filter out. It's going to act as a filter, not a tractor. It's not going to draw people to you. It's going to cause people to self-select out of your party. And I think that is an issue that every minor party has fallen prey to. It's what initially attracted me to the Forward Party when I thought it was a legitimate effort, was that they were really trying to limit their platform. And then the final issue I think that the Greens have is, I think that since the Nader campaign, the Democrats have spent hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of hours demonizing the Green Party. And I think that has found its way into, I think I mentioned this in the interview we did last week with Jason. I think that demonization has found its way into sort of the public psyche, and people think of the Green Party as the spoilers and people who have ruined elections for their team. And I'm just not convinced the Green Party can overcome that. Maybe they can. Maybe it will be easier to overcome that demonization than it would be to build something from scratch. Just don't know.
I know that like I said, the limited time I've worked with the Green Party, the people that I've met are either voters that have never really found enough commonality with Republicans or Democrats to go those routes. But also, I don't think I really met any. I don't think I've met any former Republicans. They were all former Democrats, if anything.
Mm-hmm.
And so there certainly is a pull for people who are disillusioned with the Democratic Party to go green. But I just don't think that there's been enough of a revolution on that side for Democrats to truly abandon their party and look for an alternative. So the Democrats know that they have lost people, but it's not enough to really vilify them the way that they have.
Right.
And ultimately, if the Green Party did do well in the future, I would see that as an offshoot of the Democrats in a way that you would think that they'd be able to find some consensus with each other and build a stronger country by having two parties that are basically more aligned with each other, and the Republicans would be by themselves. But that's just not the way they think. They just want to keep it the duopoly. So, and before we go, I did want to just one kind of final thing to mention in the podcast for in response to the election results. And I did mention him earlier. Bernie Sanders, I think in my lifetime, he's one of the only people that ran for the office that focused on the things that matter the most to where this country has gone and what we need to fight to get back. And I did appreciate what he had to say in lieu of the results. And I just wanted to share that here. It says that should come as no great surprise that the Democratic Party, which has abandoned working class people, would find that the working class has abandoned them. And first it was the white working class, and now it is Latino and Black workers as well. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. Today, despite strong opposition from a majority of Americans, we continue to spend billions funding the extremist Netanyahu government's all-out war against the Palestinian people, which has led to the horrific humanitarian disaster of mass malnutrition and the starvation of thousands of children. While the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party will the big money interests and well-paid consultants who control the Democratic Party learn any real lessons from this disastrous campaign? Will they understand the pain and political alienation that tens of millions of Americans are experiencing? Do they have any ideas as to how we can take on the increasingly powerful oligarchy which has so much economic and political power? Probably not.
Probably not.
And Sanders said, very serious political discussions are now merited about the path forward for those of us concerned about grassroots democracy and economic justice. And I know, Nancy Pelosi and others at the top of the Democrats just said that his that statement was wrong. I mean, I think she used even strong words than that. Let me see.
Surprise, surprise. We don't need to change.
Yeah.
Stop attacking us. We're right.
Yeah, she said that she says she doesn't respect his criticism of the Democrats.
Oh, yeah. Big fucking surprise.
Yeah. Talk about another vampire that has been had way too much power within the institution for far too long and just needs to go away.
Absolutely does. All right. Well, thank you for the discussion, Adam. Let's start getting guests back on the program for next week.
Yep.
Everyone out there, cross your fingers. And
why don't you do the likey subscribey for a second? We didn't lead the episode with that.
We actually have 8 that stuff.
We actually have 8 people watching now, and we've had a consistent 6-7 people on Rumble this whole time. So
excellent, fantastic. Well, thank you all for joining us out there. Please like and subscribe. We have the podcast. If you'd like to go back and listen to past episodes, we've got them all posted. Not only on Spotify, if you want to both watch, but wherever you listen to podcasts. There's a YouTube channel that has some slightly exclusive content. You can follow us on the socials and share this with your friends. And if you're out there and you want to talk about how you, as an everyday person out there, can make a difference and try to rise up and fight against the fucking system that's keeping us all under its heel, reach out to us. Let's get you on. Let's get some activist organizers on. Let's have a discussion. Please engage with the show.
Yeah, what's that email address?
What is that email address? It's riseupwmarc. That's Mark with a C, M-A-R-C, at gmail.com. Riseupwmarc at Gmail. And you can also follow us on Twitter, same sort of @. There's a link tree that might be, I don't know what it is. Find the Twitter account and you can find the link tree, which has links to our various other things. Follow us on Spotify. Join our Patreon. I'm sure it's out there. And I promise someday I will go look and see if there's any of you people out there who are patrons, I guess would be the word.
Patrons, yes.
patrons. And hey, tell us what sort of merch you want to see. Do you just want the buffering?
Yeah.
Shall
Buffering.
we bring back Juliet Capulet and have the cats and politics?
Cats and politics, yeah.
Would you like some Mr. Redrick Douglas quotes?
Right.
Those are my pets, are Juliet Capulet and Redrick Douglas. So
That's
yeah.
great. I didn't realize that was your dog. That's great.
All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. Really appreciate you. Adam, thank you for the discussion. And
Yeah.
you know, we
Thanks,
got to do the work. Democracy is not a spectator sport. So if we all work together and in solidarity, we can actually rise up.
Take care, everybody.
Some answers, a little bit of truth. Some answers, a little bit of truth.